Biodiversity is a term that represents the total variety of all life on Earth. That's a big thing to sum up. Thousands of different wild habitats, millions of different species, billions of different individuals, and the trillions of different characteristics they all have. The total biodiversity of our planet is immense, which is a good thing, because the more biodiversity, the more secure all life on Earth is, including ourselves. Only when life is at its most varied, vigorous, biodiverse, can we hope to thrive. We may not know it, but we need towering forests across 1/3 of the land surface to lock away carbon and keep the climate stable. We need millions of pollinators and billions of soil organisms and megatons of plankton to keep the food we eat in supply. We need strange plants deep in jungles to create our medicines, and coral reefs and mangrove swamps to protect the coasts we depend upon. Our planet's biodiversity provides all the things we need for free. But it will only do so if there's lots of it, and at the moment it's under attack. In the last 50 years, our activities have dramatically reduced biodiversity across the globe. We've snuffed out habitats, reduced populations of wild animals by 60%, and even driven whole species extinct. The number of lions in Africa has dropped by 65%. The number of individual flying insects in Europe has dropped by 75%. The number of bluefin tuna in the Pacific has dropped by 95%. Biodiversity is dropping everywhere and fast. This is catastrophic for nature and therefore ourselves. We talk about climate change a lot, but biodiversity loss is as important an issue. How do we stop this loss of life? How do we ensure that biodiversity, our planet's vital statistic, begins to increase again? In fact, we already know exactly what to do. Follow Our Planet, visit ourplanet.com and watch the series on Netflix.
And why we need it. The next video will answer our question.
Each one of those supports the greater global ecosystem. Remove just one piece of that puzzle and the entire thing becomes vulnerable. Pull too many pieces, it could all crumble. That's what biodiversity really means. But it's not too late. We can slow the extinctions and save the planet. If we protect our wild ecosystems and change our habits to help restore the lands we've already degraded, which is no small task, it means changing how we approach infrastructure, the ways we farm, and even the behaviors our economies reward around the world. No biggie though, we've landed robots on Mars. We got this. If we can agree to prioritize it. Because it's going to take bold public leadership and private investment. But this is a goal we can all get behind, right? Because we're a part of this biodiversity thing too. And preserving all that means preserving ourselves.
A Pathway in 2050 from Global Biodiversity Outlook from United Nations Environment Programme. 1. Land and Forests Transition. It aims to conserve the entire ecosystem, restoring ecosystems, and against destroying ecosystems. This is important due to the essential value of well-conserved habitats for the maintenance of biodiversity and the provision of ecosystem services for the benefit of the environment and the whole creatures. 2. Sustainable Agriculture Transition. It aims to redesign the agriculture system through innovative approaches to reduce the negative impacts on biodiversity by many solutions such as promoting integration of pest and disease management, integrating many biodiversity systems in one farm, and improving connection between farmers and consumers. And it is important to the role of biodiversity, including pollinators, pest and disease control organisms, soil biodiversity and genetic diversity, as well as diversity in the landscape, for productive and resilient agriculture. 3. Fisheries Oceans Transition. It aims to protect the entire aquatic ecosystem such as aquatic creatures, sustainable fisheries industries to not damage aquatic ecosystems, and the use of the ocean to ensure sustainability. And it aims for long-term dependency on the aquatic ecosystem and the benefit from a healthy oceans ecosystem by the protection of aquatic habitats to protect the aquatic creatures that were damaged from fisheries industries and conserve vulnerable aquatic creatures that are at high risk of extinction. 4. Sustainable freshwater transition. Freshwater ecosystems host a significant diversity of life. These habitats are home to approximately 1/3 of vertebrate species and 10% of all species and provide ecosystem services to billions of people. The current rate of wetland loss is 3 times that of forest loss, with an estimated 30% of natural freshwater ecosystems disappearing since 1970. This aims to fix the importance of biodiversity in maintaining the multiple roles of freshwater ecosystems to support human societies and natural processes. 5. Climate action transition. Using nature-based solutions together with the decrease of fossil fuel will reduce the impact and the scale of climate change and provide the benefits to biological diversity and other SDGs. It has many solutions to enhance the climate change crisis, such as conserving and restoring ecosystems, promoting sustainable renewable energy while reducing negative impact on biodiversity such as emission from agriculture, forestry, and food consumption.
6. Cities infrastructure transition. It aims to improve sustainable urbanization by the dependency of urban communities on well-functioning ecosystems to sustain the human population. And the importance of accurate planning to reduce the negative impacts on biodiversity of urban expansion, roads and other infrastructure, following many solutions such as promoting the use of green infrastructures, biodiversity consideration on planning and development infrastructure and investment by the following solution. By the way, we have a great examples that put the solution into practice. In Japan, they have the Japan Urban Green Space Conservation Act as a policy to make cities and ecosystems grow together following the co-benefits of the environment, population, and conserve the biodiversity in Japan. 7. Sustainable food transition. Sustainable and healthy food emphasizes diversity of foods, as well as cuts in the waste involved in food supply and consumption. This development highlights the advantages of a variety of foods and food systems, as well as the need to minimize demand-driven pressures on global levels while maintaining food security in all of its dimensions. Role of partnership and member countries in the Biological Diversity Convention.
World Bank Group has supported the creation and consolidation of more than 115 million hectares of marine, coastal, and land protected areas. We're also working with countries to implement their biodiversity action plans. Investing in biodiversity can support our efforts to rebuild from COVID-19 in a way that is green, resilient, and inclusive. We need to take smart policy actions to reverse the dramatic declines in biodiversity that we've seen in recent decades. This can include tackling wasteful subsidies and improving incentives for the private sector to co-invest in the sustainable use of resources. Financing for nature is good for economies, communities, and the planet.
Brazil holds approximately 1/5 of the world's biodiversity in 6 different biomes. This is only possible because more than 60% of the Brazilian territory and 85% of the Amazon rainforest are still conserved. Although it's one of the richest regions in the biodiversity in the world, the Amazon region is also home to more than 23 million Brazilians that have today the lowest human developed indexes in the country. Finding sustainable sources of prosperity is key for the future of this region. Therefore, the Brazilian government has launched important programs aiming at conserving our biodiversity while generating wealth to the local population. One example is the Forest Plus program, the largest ecosystem services payment program in the world. Also, 8 protected areas in the Amazon have been adopted by private companies since the launch of the Adopt a Park program last February.
Example and progress of biodiversity programs. Our question is how to run the development of the countries and conservation on ecology together, when the city grown the ecology needs to be contained as well. And the Global Biodiversity Outlook from United Nations Environmental Program answer us with these following 4C graph and example in Praesidis. In figure 11.1, it showed the chart of protected area in the project time, and figure 11.2, it showed the proportion of the whole protected area such as terrestrial, marine, mountain, and freshwater that were run in the program. Another is example in practice from the national experience. In China starting in 2011, the Ecological Conservation Red Line Initiative identifies and protects important ecological areas and systems. These areas are identified based on their biodiversity, importance for crucial ecosystem services and resilience to natural disasters. Once identified, strict boundaries are drawn to protect these areas from industrialization and urbanization. More than 28,000 square kilometers of land around the Yangtze River Delta have been set aside for protection, while the redlined area for the Bohai Economic Rim region covers approximately 37% of the sea area and 31% of its coastline and interior land. The Red Line Initiative is already being rolled out across 15 provinces while plans for more continue to be added. So, to receive and share benefits on biodiversity or genetic resources fair and equal based on the Nagoya Protocol in 2010, it is about the transparent legal framework for the effective implementation of a fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. The protocol covers a genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge, as well as the benefits arising from their utilization, by setting out a contract with the parties to take measures to access, benefit sharing, and compliance. The Convention on Biological Diversity gives countries the authority to regulate access to their biodiversity and genetic resources, and other countries need to ask your permission to access where the genetic resources are located, in terms of fair and equal. The Convention on Biological Diversity uses the thing called access and benefit sharing to make sure genetic resources are shared fairly.
Every country holds rights over animals, plants, and genetic resources found within its borders. Anyone from another country who wants to use such resources must respect these sovereign rights. That was agreed upon by 172 countries at the UN Rio Summit in 1992 when the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, was born. The Convention on Biological Diversity and its Bonn Guidelines define the ABS principles. An interested foreign researcher or company may only access a genetic resource if allowed by the providing country. This also includes traditional knowledge that is associated with the genetic resource, because traditional knowledge held by indigenous and local communities often plays an important role in the discovery of new active ingredients in genetic resources. In accordance with national legislation, a PIC, a prior informed consent, needs to be obtained from the providing country. The PIC request should outline the nature and the intended goal of the planned research and utilization. The MAT, the mutually agreed terms, will then define the benefits for the provider of the genetic resource as well as further contractual issues. These benefits could be monetary, such as a lump sum payment, or a share of the profit, or non-monetary, such as a transfer of knowledge, technology, or training. These rules apply to commercial users and, on the basis of special considerations, also to non-commercial users.
In 2010, the Nagoya Protocol provided a legally binding framework for implementing the access and benefit sharing principles outlined in the Convention on Biological Diversity. It sets out rules and procedures for access to genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits, to promote biodiversity conservation and sustainable development.